Okay, we are live now. Okay, so this week's case was the Army Crew team case. And the first question is, why does the varsity team lose to the JV team? So if each of us could just go around on my screen, so we'll start with Brian and then Jennifer and then Lindsay. Why you think the varsity team always loses to the JV team?
Trying to find, sorry, just before we get into it, I was just looking for not the rubric, but where we're looking at these questions.
Oh, okay. You know what? They actually are in the weekly leader drop down. So there's some weekly leader prep, and you go in and get the questions. But anybody can go in and get them. So.
Is that in week 3 or week 2?
That would be week 3. Hey, Brian, while you're looking for those, does anybody else want to jump in and say why they think the varsity team loses to the JV team?
I think it's the lack of teamwork and communication, honestly, because they said that the varsity team had the most skill and were the best qualified and everything. That's why they are varsity, but they continued to lose because of they weren't formed together as a team and wouldn't talk to each other, really, it seemed like.
Okay. And I
totally agree with Lynn.
Oh, go ahead, Jennifer. Oh, Jennifer, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. I would agree with that as well. I think just learn to work together. They learn the teamwork skills and how to.
Hey, Jennifer, you're cutting out. I didn't really hear that. You're kind of cutting out.
Me?
Yeah, Jennifer. Did everybody hear that?
I got the gist.
Okay. Okay, so I kind of think that it has to do with the JV team had nothing to lose. So as they felt like they had nothing to lose, so they just went for it. And as they started to beat the varsity, I think for the varsity, it was a slap in the face. And so they started blaming each other. And in the question here, it brings up how this created conflict within the varsity team. So Brian, did you find what you were looking for? What do you have to add?
Yeah, so I was just going to say that growing up, I played a lot of sports, and so I was able to kind of like connect with the reading. And I just always found that when a team can work together and they have chemistry in between players and within the team, they're able to accomplish a lot more than when one player tries to do more on his own. And I think that with teamwork and just like the passion of working together and striving to win rather than focusing on your own efforts will get you a lot farther. So that's just something that I thought of as I was reading it.
Okay, that's perfect. I'm glad you can relate your sports background with that. So the question says, once they started losing, then they started engaging in conflict. And what do you feel the conflict was about? And then it asks us to identify two types of conflict. Lindsay, what do you think?
I'm just trying to think of like the specific type of conflict. I think, I don't know any technical terms or anything, but I think the fact that, when the coach brought them together and they had so many qualms against each individual, but they wouldn't speak to each other. I just thought that was so crazy. I understand that's how it goes. You get frustrated and then you don't, you kind of find these little groups and then you all complain about it anyway. So I think that was just a huge conflict problem.
Okay. Yeah. And in the reading, it talks about how this is actually interpersonal conflict. So it's people getting, frustrated and angry with each other, as opposed to maybe a conflict when there's like something that has to be performed, a task. So they divide, the reading divides it up into two types of conflict. The conflict when people disagree about the task, conflict when it's more personal, they're mad at each other. So it asks us to identify what kind of conflict is going on within the varsity team. And Lindsay already said, talked about the interpersonal conflict. So do you feel like the interpersonal conflict from the task of winning, of working together as a team?
I
Sorry,
totally agree. Are you asking everyone or just me?
Oh, anybody. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. You other two can go. Sorry.
I think that well, obviously it definitely prevented them from working together as a team, but I think part of that as well was with that conflict is that they didn't trust each other. They had no trust in the other people who were on their team, which obviously you're not going to work together very well if you're not trusting that the other people can do what they need to do. And so I think that lack of trust was a big influence in that conflict and in them losing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I would also agree. I think that with trust is fundamental pretty much in any group project or group setting, whether it's a team or whether it's an assignment in school or even in work. I think if you don't trust each other to do what you need to do, then you're not going to communicate and you're not going to be successful. Whereas if you can trust each other to do the best that they can do and you're going to do all that you can do, you're going to be a lot more successful than otherwise. So.
Yeah, and if you trust
Those
them
are
as
all
well, you're not even going to have to communicate. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just if you trust them, you don't even need to communicate with them. You don't need to be saying every second like what you're planning on doing, because everybody would know what the plan is and how they're going to like undertake that plan without the actual communication.
Okay, that's perfect. Actually, you all brought up trust, and that is actually the second part of the question. It says, what role did trust play in the problems that the varsity crew faced? And you pretty much identified all of it. I'm going to run through the little questions that they asked, but you pretty much already answered that question. Is trusting other rowers necessary for the crew team's success? And this made me think in the reading where it talked about, like, if one person it gets out of sync, the other ones are not supposed to respond to it. They're just supposed to keep going, and they trust that that other person is going to get back in sync with them. So I think we kind of answered that. What happens to team trust if we replace one member of the team? And part of that question is what happened towards the end of the case when the coach would switch the varsity with the JV individuals, and what did this prove? Do you guys remember when he did that?
Yeah, I do.
Like he got, okay. So what are your thoughts on that as far as how, what happened when he replaced?
I think him switching out, even though he was trying to solve the problem of why varsity wasn't good, I think switching out created distrust for whatever individual he was taking off of each row team to switch around, because then the others would be like, oh, he can't hold his own, so then why is he on our team?
Right.
It created conflict, actually.
Right. I think it did. I think it created more conflict, and when you have more conflict, you have less trust. Jennifer, Brian, do you have anything you want to add to that about trust?
I just wanted to add a side note for, I don't know which class it is. One of my classes, we're reading The Speed of Trust.
Oh, it's B321.
Yeah, that's the one.
Good memory.
I've got like all my books and case studies all mixed up. But a part of that, he talks about how when trust increases, speed or productivity increases and the cost will go down. And I think like that's super important because like obviously you can see when they trust each other, they're winning, and when they're not, their productivity is going down. And so I just think like that trust is just so important to have with, not even just because when they were switching the teams, if all members of, like if the JV trusted the varsity, then it wouldn't have been an issue. But if everybody trusted each other perfectly, it would not have been an issue at all. So
right. Yeah. That's actually a super, super, super good book about how trust, like you said, it speeds up the process because you're transparent And because, I don't know if you read the part where they were nitpicking at each other and behind the back emails with each other. So therefore, there's no trust. So, okay. Part 3 of that question is, how did the rivalry between the two boats influence the varsity's performance? So basically, because the coach kind of created the rivalry, how did it performance? Did it help it?
No, I mean, I think it created, like I was saying earlier, I just think it created more conflict and more problems. Even though it's good that varsity and JV are together, but if varsity keeps losing to the younger team, that's not supposed to be good. That's creates some problems.
Yeah, like if it happened once in a while, then I think, it might create some motivation for the varsity team. I actually used to coach high school soccer, and like when you would bring a freshman up to play, sometimes the seniors don't like that. Do you know what I mean? But it can kind of motivate them, to work harder. Okay, so another couple of questions. Let's see. Would the varsity have faster times if they had practiced alone without the JV?
I think some of these questions just like partially have to do with like the culture of the team, because like I said, going back to or even what the example you gave within your soccer team, I think that might be different than this case and the students or the teammates that were here in this team in the varsity and JV. I know that when I used to play sports, when someone was brought up, it wasn't that I was angry, but it was even more reason to play harder. Even if they were doing really well, it was just motivating to me just to kind of prove that, you're in the right spot. But I mean, other people may take that differently. And I think that's like the culture of how everyone communicates and what has been established there in that team. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
No, that's perfect, because what you're saying is instead of the varsity using that as a motivation, like you said, you were motivated to work harder, they started blaming each other. So instead of what could have been a good thing with from the JV, ended up being just conflict within the varsity and blaming.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Part 2, it says, what should the coach have done differently? And this means, before we get to the last part, what could he have done differently throughout the season or earlier in the season to have resolved this problem?
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like with team sports, of course, you need to have the students kind of step up to be leaders or captains of the teams or whatever. But I feel like as a coach, I feel like it's your responsibility to be a leader and to step in when you think you see something in your, in your teams that you're coaching, you're leading, you're a coach, you're to guide them along. And I think he let it get too far before he tried to intervene. And when he intervened, it was almost, it's not too late because you can always fix things, but it's like that's what was frustrating to me, because it's like, as a leader, that's when you step in and start help facilitating leadership, or get the ones that could be leaders to their peers and invite them to start building a team of trust. And anyway, I think he just should have intervened much sooner.
Okay, Jennifer, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Lindsay said there about as she said, not too far. He didn't, but definitely he should have done something sooner and try to get them to work as a team sooner, because it could have, obviously, if he'd started trying to get them to work as a team sooner, it wouldn't have been as hard, and the relationship of trust could have been easier to build between the teams and the players, or rowers, whatever they're called.
Brian, what do you think he could have done differently earlier in the season?
My answer is kind of similar. I just think the most effective leaders or coaches tend to connect with those that they're working with. So kind of on a personal level, showing true interest and care about the team's well-being and personal performance. So I think Like you could have like personal like talks or interviews or discussions with your team outside of when you're actually performing, but just to show like, hey, like we need to fix these things. I'm noticing these issues. Like, what do you guys think? And then force them to communicate with each other and to get involved more than they previously had. And if they can learn to connect and communicate, I think it would only improve upon performance.
That's perfect. That actually made me think of how he relied too much on the physical aspect of it. You know, his whole selection process was based strictly on strength and ability, and not so much, I think, Brian, you had mentioned, on chemistry. And it made me think, back when I took B321, there was a coach at the University of Oregon that came up with the 5 stages of group development. And this actually isn't in the case study, it's just something I found in my notes. But he says stage 1 is the forming stage. And this goes along with what Brian just said. You got to learn to depend on each other. But then once you get formed, there's actually the storming stages, that's when you have to resolve comes up, not blame each other, but look for a way to resolve this conflict. And if you never get out of the storming phase of a group, you don't go any further. And I think what Brian said is really key, that to do things outside of the rowing practice to develop as a team, and not just inside just at practice. So the stage 3 is called norming. That's when everything kind of gels together, and then performing. Interesting that they never got out of the storming stage. They never resolved their conflict, and so they were just kind of stuck in this cycle the whole season. Okay, so along with that question, part 3 is now, what should the coach do now? Okay, so it's like, what was it, like a week before nationals? What should he do? Let's go around, everybody say what you think he should do now, not earlier in the season, but what can he do now?
I think it's just DEFCON 5, like Brian, you were saying, like he's going to have to do it quickly and try to build up trust really quickly and show that he cares, and kind of create this safety net underneath them to maybe unify him as a team, because he's got to work fast and able to do that.
That's
yeah, good. I agree. I feel like at this point, like, they're all as physically strong and fit as they're gonna get for the season. So why waste time on that when they could be doing outside things and just teamwork activities, or just having dinner, just something simple, and get people to like communicate with each other.
Yeah, actually, maybe I like that. It's kind of like what Brian said, taking them out of the rowing aspect, and maybe just looking at the team as as people, and not just as rowers. Brian, what do you think the coach should do now?
It'd be pretty similar to what I previously said. I just think that whatever he chooses to do, I don't think it's wise to just give up on the team when there's probably more that could be done to bring them together. So I don't think it'd be wise to just make replacements or move JV up or anything like that. I think he should, meet with them, talk with them as a team, and then individually try to get them to work better together. And then you can even establish, when you do have these meetings, you can establish a, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, you can let the team know, like, hey, like, we need to work together. And if you're going to try to do this on your own, it's not going to work. And so if you are going to be that player, well, it needs to be known that we're going to have to bring up someone to replace you. Like, let it be known, set the
precedent.
Yeah, exactly. That they need to know, like, just because they have the jersey now doesn't mean they get to keep it forever if they're not willing to work together. And so if you can just let people work together and figure it out, and you can talk with them individually, feel for where they're at personally in their lives and in the team and what their goals are, and then try to bring them together in that way, while letting them know, like, it is a sport and you do play to win. So if they're not willing to work as a team, then you'll find someone that will. So that's what I would do.
No, that sounds good. So it says at this point, I'm actually supposed to read to you what actually happened. So I'm actually going to read this. I'm not going to paraphrase it. So we actually, and this is really interesting. I actually did this case study. I thought we did it in B321. We actually did it, and it focused on a totally different, not different thing, but they had you do different things. So I actually never knew what happened. So I'm excited to find out finally what happened, because when we did the case study, we had to make a recommendation, and I actually recommended that he just let the JV go to nationals. Ended up doing, but okay. So this is actually from Fortune magazine, and it starts out that letting conflict fester is really their main problem. They've let the conflict fester, and that they need to bring the tensions out in the open and resolve them. So this is what happens. So so the problem is the JV beat the varsity 2/3 of the time. The situation is that the varsity was full of resentment over who was contributing the most, feeling they had nothing to lose, supported one another happily. So this is what he did. He lined up the varsity crew in 4 pairs, and he told them that they had to wrestle. So no punching, but they had to wrestle for 90 seconds. And there were no clear winners because they were all pretty evenly matched physically. So each rower was discovering that his opponent was just as strong and determined as he was. So then the coach had them change opponents and wrestle again. And he kept doing this. And finally, by the 3rd round, the guys were picking their own opponents. And he said one guy would opponent another and say, you. So it was kind of like they started picking the people that they had issues and conflict with. And then as they began to wrestle, after a few more minutes of this, they kind of started laughing, and then they just finally just ended up in a big dog pile brawl. He just said, "Coach, can we go row now?" And from then on, the varsity beat the JV, and their times were much better.
That's so
the article
cool.
says I know I would never would have thought of that, but I have a lot of kids and a lot of boys, and I can see like sometimes I just tell them, go take it outside. Yeah, go take it outside, take it outside and deal with it. So it says you probably can't order members of an executive team to wrestle, tempting though it may be, but bringing tensions out in the open and then resolving them is one of the team leader's most important job. So that was the coach's job. In a way, he created this situation because he really didn't use the best selection process. His selection process was strictly based on physical ability and not chemistry. And so he created this problem, but he should have fixed it. And when he, didn't let it go all season, this is kind of what brought it to the head was all the conflict. So let's go around. It says, why do you think this response worked? And how could you learn from this approach that might apply to a team in a business setting? Because obviously we can't wrestle, but so let's go around. Everybody tell why they think this worked. It's such a simple thing. You could have done it sooner in the season, but everybody go around and tell why they think it worked.
I think he made them attack everything head on. He made them wrestle.
Yeah.
You have to face each other face to face, and you have to do it. And I feel like a lot of time with conflict or problems, that's how you resolve things. Is it's uncomfortable and it is scary or whatever, but you have to just face it head on, and then things get resolved, and then you create an understanding. You can move forward.
Okay, that's good. I like the fact that you said it is uncomfortable, because it is.
It's very uncomfortable.
Unresolved conflict that's lying just right beneath the surface is highly uncomfortable to me. I would rather have it out in the open. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah, Brian or Jennifer, what do you guys think?
I would just say
about what he did.
You'll never get over an issue unless you confront it, and I think that he forced the team to confront their issues, and once they did, they were able to move on and move past them. And they had all these issues within themselves, and they're just festering and trying to figure out, why this person wasn't pulling his own weight, and why this person, was on the team, and whatever reason, they just had issues with each other. and they weren't going to deal with it. They were just going to let it bottle up on their own, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just going to let it happen, just thinking that everyone wasn't as good as the other. But the coach forced them to confront their issues. I think that was awesome. Was wise.
It was wise. Jennifer, what do you think about this? And since you're reading the book of trust, how does it kind of fit into the whole trust model, and like how could you apply that in like a business setting?
Yeah, so firstly, I think that just by making them wrestle, especially in that third round where they were choosing their own like opponents, I think that it just made them confront it. And when they were confronting that, I think they just realized like how small and silly those issues that they had were. And that in the big scheme of things, they really didn't matter. Like, that's not going to help them win. And I think they probably just realized that, and that's why they wanted to get back and just start rowing. And then in a business sense, I think like as leaders, obviously, we're not going to send employees to wrestle, but we can be open with them and like have trust between the employee and the employer and just all colleagues. And if you have that trust, people will feel comfortable to tell you their issues, and that conflict wouldn't ever arise in the first place if you had trust.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I like the way you made the connection that if there is trust, then you're going to probably not have the conflict.
At least not as much conflict.
Yeah, right. Or at least it can be easily resolved.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go around one more time. This is the wrap up. It says, ask each team member what's the most important thing that they learned from the case. And then you're supposed to rate our discussion today. So, and what we could do better next time. So, Brian, we always go to you last. So let's start with you first.
Sure. So what I learned the most, applying this case to like the future and business settings, I just thought that it's so important to trust those that I'm working with and just count on them that, you know, they're going to do what they can, and I'm going to do what I can. And if we can work together and communicate and even connect on a personal level, I think that will only help us succeed as a team and do better, no matter what career path or where I end up. So that's what I learned. As far as rating the discussion, I personally, like, I don't want to take like a cop out and say it was a 10, but I do think it was. If not a 10, at least a 9, because generally these discussions aren't super insightful in like other classes, at least in my opinion. But I thought that we all stayed focused and actually answered all the questions and did well. So I would say that it went really good. And as far as things we could do better next time, the only thing that went wrong really was we didn't like have emails when we started. We started a little late.
Yeah.
So that was it. So good.
Okay. Okay. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. So probably what I learned the most was just about the teamwork that you need to have. If you're working in a team and you're only caring about yourself and what you do, it's never going to get done properly. It's never going to, I mean, it could get done, but not as quickly or as efficiently as it could in the team. And it reminded me actually of another quote from that book that I just wanted to share real quick. And it was talking about humility. And it says, a humble person is, what does it say? A humble person is more concerned about building the team than exalting themselves. And I just thought that was something that could easily be applied to this case, because I think that's probably the issue a lot of those rowers had, was they wanted to be the best, but they didn't want to work on the team and the team being the best. And so I think that's just super important to work together as a team, like Brian said, both within the activity and without. And then I'd probably give it like a 9 or 10 as well, because I've yeah.
Okay, I like that you brought in the Speed of Trust book. I've actually kept that on my desk for quite a while, just because it's so full of not just things for business, but for interpersonal relationships as well. Everything in the book is, even though Covey comes and relates it to a business setting, it ultimately in business, there are still interpersonal relationships. So, Lindsay, what was the most important thing you learned in the case?
I think the most important thing I learned was just the importance of leadership. I feel like leadership is someone who can lead as well as follow. And I feel like that could have probably solved some problems, you know, from the coach all the way down to the peers. I like this case. It's the second time I've read it. And so I like rereading stuff because then you kind of pull more stuff out of it the second time.
Right.
And I think the discussion was a 10 out of 10. I thought it was good. And I think the only thing to do better next time is that I'll be on time. But other than that, I think we did great.
Okay. Okay, I'll just take a couple seconds and then we'll be done. And I did this case before and I liked that I looked at it from a different perspective this time. And like I said before, I had recommended that he actually worry about the varsity next season, send his JV to the nationals. But I actually like this resolution better, that he saw that that the criticism, the conflict, it had to be resolved, and the way he resolved it sounds kind of like like something I wouldn't have thought of, but it worked. And so that does show that he was a leader, that he did know his team, the best out of his team, because that's what I think a leader does too, is they get the best performance out of their team. And the way he did that, to me kind of said he knew his team and he knew that would work for them. So okay, so that's pretty much it. So do you guys want to set, did we decide this is our set meeting time, or how does this time work for everybody? If it doesn't work good, let's change it.
It's fine.
Because I actually think it was Josh that says he has a class during this time. So I'm going to send out an email, and if everybody could maybe put, I know we said we all want to meet between 10 or 8 to 12 is what we signed up for.
Class?
So I think he said it's 10 to 11. So maybe it's just on Fridays. I don't know. So let me find out from Josh. I'll put out another email and let's see if we can, set a specific time every week. So in general, Brian, what's your availability?
In like every day or just Friday?
Well, I actually would prefer not to do Fridays, but just in general.
In general, hey, let me pull up my schedule.
Okay. Well, I think he put us in this group because we said we could do 8 to 12. So if you can do 8 to 12, what days can you do that time frame? And
while
Jennifer, and
I can do.
So I would prefer Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay.
If I could do Tuesday, Thursday from 9 to 11.
Okay. Is that are you on Mountain Time?
Yeah, I'm here on campus at Rexburg.
Oh, okay. Okay, 10 to 11 Mountain. And Lindsay, what did you say?
I'm good Mountain Time sorry, I'm Pacific Time, so I'm always trying to think. I think like for sure 9:30 I could do. That's the earliest. And then wait. No, 8:30. Wait, sorry. Every day. Because I work in the morning until 9 Mountain Standard Time. I get back from dropping my girl at school around 9:15. So I for sure could be on at 9:30.
Okay, and that's Mountain Time?
That's Mountain Time. Or 9. I can be on at 9.
Okay.
No. Sorry. 9:30. Sorry.
Okay. As early as 9:30. Okay.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, what's your availability?
So Mondays I'm usually free like all day. And then
okay. How about the Tuesday, Thursday that Brian?
Tuesday through Thursday I work like different schedules every day, so
okay.
I don't know. I could probably on Tuesdays like do like 8:30 to 9, because normally I wouldn't go in till 10. So that's still good.
And is what time slot are you on?
Mountain.
Are you Mountain?
Yeah.
You're on Mountain. Okay.
And then
so Brian, would that be?
Yeah.
So if we could say Tuesdays, could Brian, did you say 9 on Tuesdays? 9 to 11?
Yeah, I said 9 to 11.
And I could make it at 9. I could just hurry and make sure to get on. I might just be a couple minutes late each
Okay.
time, but I